Welcome back to the Real Power Family radio show, where we teach you what we know about becoming financially free. Right now, Ethan has a couple of questions about debt. Where would you like to start, Ethan?
Let's start with, does the government really spend $5 billion more than they bring in?
You are correct. It's actually closer to $5.5 billion a day. And that is how much they spend above and beyond the taxes they collect. Do you understand just how much money that is?
I don't. How much is that?
Well, you tell me, how much is $1 million? If I went to the bank and they actually had $1 million in the vault to give me, could I carry it out? How much space would it take up?
If you used $100 bills, then you would be able to fit it in a briefcase.
Right. A briefcase or a suitcase would carry $1 million. So really, that's not that much money. It's not like what they show on some TV shows. Now, it seems like when we go from a million to a billion, that seems like, oh, it's at least twice as much. But you know math, you know it's really 1,000 times as much, isn't it?
Yes.
So what is 1,000 times as much of a million in space? How much room would that take up?
In $100 bills, it would be about a pallet full of $100 bills, which is a lot.
That is a lot, and that's a pallet full without any suitcases. It fills up the whole pallet, stacked many feet high. So let me put that, if you don't want to think about space, what about time? How long ago was 1,000,000 seconds?
I believe it's about a week and a half ago.
You're right, about a week and a half. And 1,000,000,000 seconds. Do you know how long ago that was?
I do not. How long ago was that?
That was about 32 years. So twice as long as your brother's been alive, and not quite three times your lifespan. So how long, if we go from a week and a half in seconds to 32 years, how long is 1,000? That's 32,000 years is 1,000,000,000,000 seconds ago. Did you
Wow.
know that
That
we spend 32,000 years of seconds in dollars? We actually are spending, as a US government, about 2 trillion more than they bring in each year right now.
that's a lot. And in dollars, that's a whole gymnasium full of money.
That's right. A gym or an auditorium full of money is about of stacked floor to ceiling of $100 bills. Visualize that. That's how much a trillion is. So the next time some politician comes up and says, "Oh, it's just a billion," remember, just a billion leads to trillions. A billion's a pallet full of dollar bills, and a trillion is a huge room. And what we're spending right now, about every 2 days in America, we spend enough $100 bills more than we make to fill up your entire bedroom from floor to ceiling, wall to wall.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And many of you listeners out there say, well, that's just you Americans. Let's look. Do you know if any of the other countries in the world are doing better or worse than us?
I do not. How are they doing?
Well, let's put it in terms of how long this has been going on. It took over 200 years to reach $1 trillion in debt. Now, let's put this in human terms, not government terms. That would be the balance on your credit card. It took us about 200 years, just over that, to get to $1 trillion in debt. Now we're spending $2 trillion every year more than we bring in. So we're adding 2 trillion in debt. What we currently owe in the United States is 33 trillion. Do you know what the entire world owes in debt?
I do not. How much does the whole world together?
They owe 87.4 trillion just in government debt for the nations of the world. That means America has about a third, just over a third of all the national debt in the world is from America. And that's basically because so many people are using the US dollar as a reserve currency, which we might talk about later, that allows them to keep printing and shipping these dollars overseas so it doesn't lead to massive inflation. And then they say, look, we've been printing so much for so long and we haven't had any inflation. Oh, wait, until a year or so ago. That is not really causing any problems. I think your formula is wrong. And I say it's worked for 6,000 years. There's never been a country that started printing money and devaluing the money into currency, because money is a store of value. Currency is just a unit that people print, like the dollar, the Aussie dollar, the pound, the yen, the renminbi. All of these are just currencies that are not backed by anything of value. They used to be backed by gold, but as of August 15th of 71, President Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard, and we were the last country backed by gold. Since then, for the last 50 years or so, we and every other country on earth has been printing money. So if you think, well, it can't be that bad for my country if the U.S. owes a third of the debt, look at this. The U.S. owes 33 trillion, and that is about 130% of our GDP. Do you know what that means?
No, what does that mean for our debt being more than our GDP?
All right,
And
so
what
first
is
off,
GDP?
good question. First off, the GDP is the gross domestic product. Think about it as if you were a human and not a government, your gross domestic product would be the total amount you earn, your annual salary. It's how much money every piece of everything that we make and every service we sell in America. So every country has its own GDP, and that's the country's annual salary. When you put it into terms as a percentage of GDP, you can suddenly see that America, even though it has more total debt, it's only 130% of GDP. If you look at Japan, they're just crazy. That's why they call it the lost decades. They have 217%, actually more than 217% for debt to GDP ratio. Let's look at the UK. The UK only owes 1.95 trillion pounds, which I haven't done the math to convert that to dollars. But let's just go. If you're in the UK, you owe 1.95 trillion pounds, which is greater than your GDP. It's more than 100%. Not quite 130%, but this is the highest debt to GDP ratio people in the UK have experienced since the 1960s. Actually, the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken. It was right around in there. And what happened in the 1940s? Do you remember?
Is that World War II?
That's right. Now, Great Britain got hit pretty hard. They spent an awful lot of money in World War II. And Churchill decided they were going to go the hard way and they were going to get back. They weren't going to devalue the pound. It was still going to be backed by something of value. Right around there, Bretton Woods started, and that's when basically every country on earth tied the value of their currency to our dollar. And the U.S. agreed that the dollar, it would always take $35 to buy an ounce of gold. So it was tied to gold in a roundabout way. That's the last time in the 60s when they were coming off of that massive debt bubble that they had more debt than their entire GDP. Look at some of the other countries. If you're our friends to the north in Canada, you have $1.2 trillion Canadian dollars of debt. And that equates to just over half of your GDP. What about down under? What's Australia looking like? They actually look pretty good on a dollar figure, and you have to realize how many less people there are in Australia. They've got 583 billion, which is still half almost of their GDP debt, debt to GDP ratio. So we're sitting at over 2 times for Japan, 1 1/3 for the US. Let's call it half for Great Britain and Canada. And then Great Britain's about 100%, and then Canada and Australia at half Every country on earth has these massive debts that they have printed because they want to take more control of your life. They want to take away your freedoms, which is exactly what I'm teaching you and your brother to protect. How do you protect your freedom? How is this going to come back? Can we just do this forever? Do we have a magic money tree? Is modern monetary theory modern? And is it a theory that hasn't already been disproven over and over? We'll talk about these things after our next break. Welcome back to the Real Power Family Radio Show, where Ethan and I were just talking about the massive amounts of debt. Now, this is not just sovereign debt. This is not just government debt. Did you know that there's $1.5 trillion worth of commercial debt that's going to be due just in America by 2025?
I did not know that.
Here's another fun fact on the personal level. Credit card, all right, maybe not so fun a fact. Credit card debt went up 17% just in the last year. It is almost at $1 trillion for personal credit card debt.
I have a question first. How is that going to affect us?
Well, what do you think? I have taught you, a lot of people teach all debt's bad. Is that what I've taught you?
No, there's good debt and bad debt. And Robert Kiyosaki also teaches that in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
So tell me what you learned from Robert.
There's good debt and bad debt. Good debt, from what I've learned, it's when we buy real estate, we borrow money on it, and then we use the rent that we get to pay back on those mortgages. And those mortgages are the good debt. That's what helps us make money. And that's also how I can invest, being underage and not having enough money to put a full down payment on a house.
So what some people would say is you use leverage, and there are risks to that. And it's the only way that a 7-year-old is going to be able and go out and buy a house if their mommy and daddy doesn't give them any money, right? I mean, there are
Right.
very few 7-year-old millionaires out there. And if you learn, like I taught you and your brother, how to use debt appropriately, and you only buy assets that cash flow, that can pay back the debt for you, that is good debt. And it's actually, with all this debt in the world, we're going to talk about inflation in a minute. The debt gets eaten away by the inflation. So it can actually, inflation can help when you have good debt. Credit card debt, however, is not good debt. For instance, once upon a time, I bought a house on a credit card. All right, I might have done that more than once. And letting that sit, my credit card interest rate was so high, there's no possibility that the rent coming in could make the payment. So even though I bought an asset, it wasn't cash flowing. It was costing me more to own it than it was bringing in. That is my definition of bad debt. What's another thing that people put on their credit cards that you think might be bad debt?
A lot of doodads. And some people will think that their personal house they live in is an asset, but it's a doodad. The definition of an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So if you go out and buy a new car or a new TV or whatever it is, then it's not going to bring you in any money unless you are creative enough to find a way that it can make money. So renting it out or buying it as an investment and not to have fun with yourself.
So taking a trip might be awesome to go spend time with your family. And if you have to pay for it on a credit card, then going to Disneyland or Disney World might not be the best option. We just had some
Right.
friends that did that, only they went on a cruise or almost went on a cruise, and all of that went onto their credit card. That's not a good use. If you want to take a vacation, let's figure out a way to earn the money, or better yet, create the money without actually having to go to work to earn it, and then spend that money on the fun things so we can spend more time and have more fun with our family. First, we take care of our finances, and then our finances take care of our family. If we try and take care of our family and put all of that instant gratification on a credit card, we're going to end up as a nation of having $1 trillion in credit card debt with skyrocketing interest rates. And that is going to dramatically decrease not only the money we spent, but all the interest we pay is going to be taken away from our future enjoyment.
Right.
So go ahead. You had another question?
Well, one question is, you had said that none of the currencies are backed by gold anymore. What about the new BRICS currency?
That is a very good question, and I would love to give you an answer. Perhaps by the time this show airs, I'll know. Right now, they're talking about backing the BRICS currency by gold. That would be fantastic. It would be the first time in 50 years that we had a major currency backed by gold. And if you look back over thousands of years of recorded history, there's never been a time that we didn't have at least one major currency backed by gold up until 1971. So this 50-year period is a complete anomaly, even though it's longer than I've been alive and way longer than you've been alive. Since we haven't had a major currency backed by gold, all of the governments got into all of the debt all at the same time. And that's going to have some pretty bad repercussions. Do you know what they are?
I do not. What are they?
What happens when you have too much debt and you have to keep printing more currency units to pay off the debt? What's that lead to?
A lot of inflation?
It does lead to a lot of inflation. Tell me, what is inflation?
Inflation is the increase in monetary supply.
That's
And when when they print more money, then there's more money, and there's multiple types of inflation. Can you go over some of the types of inflation?
that's brilliant, Ethan. Yes, we first have increase in the monetary supply. And that is simply printing more currency units. It is whatever central bank or government decides to increase the money, and it's not money, it's currency. It's not backed by value. You can't just print more gold. You can't print more real estate. You can't print more farmland. Since they can make this out of something that doesn't have value and tell you it's valuable, all of these dollars go out into the circulation. You spend your pounds if you're in the UK and you try and convert it to something like real estate. Maybe you buy stocks with it. That causes asset price inflation, which is the next kind of inflation. And as they're printing more and more currency units, we experienced a lot of asset price inflation over the last handful of years. And that was great. We had the stock market bubble, and it was wonderful. Everybody felt richer. All their IRAs and SEPs and 401ks and superannuation, whatever it is that you have, everybody that had money in stocks thought life was great because the value of the stocks kept going up. And then 2000 happened, and we had a major stock market crash. And suddenly you felt a lot poorer. Remember, this is not actualized gains. It's not value in your hands. It's just numbers on a piece of paper you get. And then we continued with asset price inflation. And guess what happened over the early 2000s leading up to 2007, 8, and 9?
What happened?
Come on, you remember what went up in value like crazy, even though you weren't born.
Was it the real estate?
It was the real estate bubble. And everybody kept thinking their house was worth more. And they used it like an ATM. They just withdrew currency out of it. And they kept getting loans or second mortgages and taking more money out. And then we did the same thing. However, I took the money out and I bought another house and I rented it out. And then I took money out of it and I bought another house and I rented it out. And I did that over and over hundreds of times, which is why we are where we are today. We do have
Even
many millions of dollars in debt, and every dollar of debt, principal and interest, and all the other holding costs, taxes, insurance, repairs, management, the works, All of that is paid for. I never once went out and bought a building just to own a building because I thought it was pretty or I liked it or I wanted my name on it. I only bought a building if I was sure I could make a cash flow. That is what made it good debt for us and put us in the position we're in today, and not in the position where we're trying to pay off our credit cards.
And you used all the money you got and reinvested it. So instead of going out and buying a new car, you went out and bought a mobile home park that paid the down payment on your car.
Actually, I didn't pay the down payment. It paid every payment for the next handful of years until that sports car was paid off. And now I'm still driving that same sports car. I'm going to jump in it in a little bit and go out to lunch. And it's been paid off for a very long time, still driving the same one that's over 10 years old. And that mobile home park, it made me thousands of dollars every month after that, until some guy came along and said I wanted to buy it. And I told him it wasn't for sale. And he told me how much he wanted to pay. And I kind of choked and said, wow, I guess it is for sale. And that's what happens when you buy an asset. But do you think anybody would have walked in to buy a 8-year-old or 10-year-old Porsche and said, hey, I'll give you $1 million for that?
I'm not sure.
No, absolutely not. That would be completely insane unless it had some numismatic value, which is what we'll talk about at some other episode. But no, there's no 10-year-old car that they're going to walk in, at least not that model, and pay $1 million for. So do you know where all of this is going to go? All this extra debt, all this money printing.
I don't. Where is it going to go and how can we profit off of it?
That is a really good question. Let's talk about what happens when you print money. It leads to inflation. It is inflation, which leads to asset price inflation. And then came the crash that started around 2007 and really hit the banks by 2009, which gave us incredible buying opportunities by 2010. So that was a good thing. What does all of this inflation mean for us, and how can we profit from it? Well, we talked about the printing of money, which is inflation, or the printing of currency. We talked about asset price inflation, but what is the inflation that everybody talks on the news? Do you know what inflation they're talking about?
The consumer price inflation?
That's right. When costs of goods and services goes up, when the average Joe on Main Street feels the pain, what do they have to pay more for, Ethan?
Anything that they're continuously buying. So the food prices go up, the gas prices, stuff like that.
That's right. Gas and groceries and everything else. But if we just look at that, do you know how much inflation some countries on earth are experiencing right now? And now we're talking about consumer price inflation.
I don't. What are some of the higher amounts?
Well, I think Venezuela's winning right now with 400%. So to put that into perspective, what you could have bought for $100 will cost you $400 next year. That means in 3 months, it's going to go way up. In fact, you're going to see increases every day. This inflation is so high, they don't even put prices on menus, or you might see them scribbled out and they just keep writing more and more. And most people in really most of the Western world haven't seen that much. There's a lot of South American countries that have experienced this over and over. For instance, Argentina, if I'm not mistaken, they were just at 120%. Now they're trying to report that they're back down into the low 100% range. That's still, even if it's true, they are doubling the cost of things every single year. So in 2 years, it cost 4 times as much as now. In 3 years, 8 times as much. It just keeps doubling. And they went so far, they're so fed up. This has happened so many times in Argentina that they actually voted for a libertarian presidential candidate. And he was the highest ranked out of 3. He took just over a third of the vote, I believe. And he wants to go back to sound money, which sounds fantastic. Unfortunately, he's comparing, I guess, compared to the Argentinian peso, the US dollar is sound money, but he wants to go on the US dollar as their currency, more or less. And then you look, Cuba is at 42%, Haiti 46%. But wait, let's just focus on the EU. We've got Germany and the EU have 6% inflation. So about every 11 years, the cost of a new truck doubles. The cost of a gallon of milk doubles. Everything you need to buy. Think about what you're paying in rent right now. That's going to double in the next 10 years. And I have a feeling, just like in the US, we're sitting at around, well, let's see, 8% in the UK. In the US, they say we're down to 3%. And then we'll stick Australia in the middle at 6%. I'm not entirely sure I believe those numbers. Let's ask mom what she pays for milk and bread when she goes and buys us groceries, or all that ramen and soup that you like to eat while we're gone. I bet she's going to tell you it's more than 3% expense. It's at least 3% more expensive, probably more like 5 to 7% more expensive than it was a year ago. And the thing is, not every country's doing this. If you look at Switzerland, they're maintaining at less than 2% inflation. So some governments are making decisions that allow them to get to 400% inflation. Other governments are at 5 or 10% inflation, while others are keeping it below 2%. So they're still cheating the system. They're still printing fake currency units, which devalue the ones that are already in circulation, but they're doing way less.
And it's not as bad. It doesn't hurt people as much.
Right. So it is possible to live in this world that we all live in and not cheat the system. We just have to elect the right politicians. When enough people believe this is what we want to do, and it doesn't take 50%. I think when we hit critical mass of around 20 to 25%, that is what it's going to take to change what people do. But on to the most important part, how can we benefit from this? If we can't change, and it might take another decade, it might take the rest of your life to change the government. What can we do right now to benefit from all of this inflation?
Well, we can go out. One of the things that we teach a lot is to go out and keep learning more about investing. And then you can invest now. And since the prices of stuff are rising, if you buy it right now and then hold it, then you can sell it for more money. So just go out and learn ways to invest, learn ways that you can make passive income and also make money with inflation.
One of the ways that you can buy real estate, even if you don't have that much money, Devin writes an entire chapter on how to finance it in his first book, If I Can Do It, So Can You, How I Started Buying Real Estate at Age 7, which you can get a copy of the digital version on our website, or you can get it on Amazon, wherever you are. If I Can Do It, So Can You by Devin Wohlwend. Other things that we do, how do we store our value? How do we store money, not currency?
We store money in gold and silver, which we learned about by watching Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money series and by going to the New Orleans Investment Conference, which is where we learned more about gold and gold mine and also about oil wells, which helps reduce our taxes. But that's another story.
And thanks a lot, Mike, for making that incredible series. I also love listening to your weekly updates and read a lot of your stuff from goldsilver.com. Anybody that's interested definitely should check that out on YouTube. Again, you'll see that we take our kids and we continuously grow and learn with them. It makes our family stronger. It gives us new ideas. And at the New Orleans Investment Conference, also a really good conference, that's where Devin and I learned a lot about oil wells. And Devin bought into his first oil well last year, which gave him incredible tax benefits. And hopefully it will also start producing money pretty soon and not just giving us write-offs. These are some of the things we're doing. Buy hard assets, buy real estate that cash flows. Teach your children how to buy real estate that cash flows once you learn. Go to different seminars where other people are doing this. Start a meetup group in your local area. Join a local real estate investor association or network. Uh, any group of people where investors get together, because you cannot learn new things if you're hanging out with all your old friends doing the same old stuff. Maybe some of them will want to come to the new meetings with you, others won't. It doesn't matter. The key is surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do, and you will get to where they are. You will find that over the next couple of years, your network will become your net worth. And you will average about what the 5 friends that you spend the most time with make. So if you want to make more money, if you want to have more assets, if you want to have more freedom, spend time with 5 people that have that freedom. If you don't know where to get started, we have a lot of newsletters. If you like what you hear here, our newsletters are on our website. They come out. Get our free newsletter every Wednesday. If you want to read all of them for less than a subscription to Netflix, you can sign up and get more than a year's worth of past newsletters and video updates and everything in our mentoring program. Until next time, go out, buy more hard assets faster. The inflation not only decreases the debt that you are paying back, it also increases the value through appreciation. It is good all around, provided those assets are cash flowing. If you've got a little bit of extra money, buy bullion, silver, and gold. Store it in a non-bank vault, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. And whatever you do, spend more time with your kids. Have some family time. Have some discussions about this. Turn off the TV, sit outside and talk at night like we do every night on the patio about how they can buy more assets faster so they can make the world a better place. Talk to you next time.